Good evening. Hey, what I wanted to do first is go through these guidelines for reopening that we were given by the Archbishop earlier this week. They're going to be the basis of our the proposal I offer to you tonight. So let's take a look at what he has given to us. The first is that the Sunday obligation to attend Mass will continue to be dispensed. Until we can accommodate everybody, until there isn't real concern for physical health, safety, that obligation just can't be in place. And the Archbishop understands that and does want to make sure that everybody knows that they are dispensed from their Sunday obligation. Persons with higher vulnerability to the virus are strongly encouraged to take advantage of that dispensation and refrain from attending public Mass. And you can see I put that in quotes. That's taken directly from the Archbishop's document. I want to echo that, but I also am not one who's going to make a choice for those individuals. If you happen to fall in that category of more susceptible people, you've been advised, but we're not going to have bouncers at the door to prevent you from entering. All right, just know that there's a risk there, but I leave it up to your own choice. Those who have symptoms obviously should not attend. And this is interesting. Registered parishioners should attend the parish in which they're registered. No parish hoppings. That should ordinarily be the case. You shouldn't hop parishes from here to there. But this is really important for us to be able to plan. We just can't plan for an influx of St. Catherine's parishioners, or St. Joe's can't plan for an influx of Sacred Heart parishioners during these times. Okay, there'll be a way that we sample our population, which will allow us to create a Mass schedule that works for us, but there's no way that we can sample other populations. We've got to adhere to density restrictions that are imposed by the local or state public health orders, how many people can gather and the distance that must be maintained in between people. For example, here are the behaviors of those attending the guidelines from the Archdiocese: that we must observe a 6-foot distance, that we must purify our hands with sanitizer upon entering and exiting the church. We must wear a mask, covering the mouth and nose, and wear it prior to entering the church and through departure at this point in time. We'll have a couple masks on hand, but we can't provide for everybody, so we do ask that everybody be responsible and bring their own. If those couple go and you don't have yours, well, the ushers will have to say, "Hey, I'm sorry," or required to not permit you. Okay. Physical contact with those outside of the immediate household is to be avoided. Okay, just like we're accustomed to nowadays. We observe 6-foot spacing with non-immediate family members while in the communion line. Okay, so what you'll see in the church will be tape on the floor. For communion, there'll be one line of people down the center aisle. Okay, and they should move only when the person in front of them has moved, and move up to the next piece of tape that marks the 6-foot interval. One pew at a time should go, and we're asking everyone to do communion in the hand and make a nice, steady, flat platform for me to hit. I'll hold the host just barely over your hand, and then let it drop down onto your hand. Now, this one surprised me. Congregational singing should be suspended to limit droplet dispersion. So I think the more effort you put into your voice, the louder you speak, the more you sing, the more that those little deadly droplets are projected out, um, even through a mask. So it seems strange, but we're not going to be able to admit congregational singing for a little while. Yeah, you can hum, that's fine, but it'll be a little hard. But please help us out with that. We'll have an accompanist and a cantor, and we'll leave it up to them to lead us, and we'll follow with our minds and our hearts. Liturgical practices, well, we'll have a 45-minute Sunday Mass duration. That's to limit the exposure between persons. 45 minutes. Again, this is the Archdiocesan guidance. Church has to be one of the riskier venues in which we're at these days. I go to the grocery store, it's early in the morning. I run in, run out. I'm not around the same person for hardly any time at all when I'm in that store. It's large, and I'm moving about, so it's not a risky environment. The church, well, we're in an enclosed environment, even though it's a big place, but for quite a while. And so it's a little bit riskier. So the 45-minute limit is to help facilitate that. Now, if there's little singing, it's easier to do that. Sure, there's effective air circulation. We'll have the HVAC on. We'll discontinue the use of shared hymnals and missals. So we're going to take those out from the church. That is, we plan to take the ones that are in the pews where people can be seated. We have pews that are taped off where you can't be seated, and we plan to leave the hymnals in there as long as nobody picks them up. That'll just save us from having to collect them and having to find somewhere to store them. We'll continue not to have holy water in the stoops at the entrances of the church, and we'll have to do adapted offertory procedures. So we can't pass the basket, but fortunately, I was able to order those old-fashioned baskets on a pole. I remember from growing up, it's the first weekend which we were asked to alter our collection procedures. I ordered those, and then I began to kick myself because masses were canceled. And I thought, well, those poles aren't going to be long enough to get to the people at home. But now they'll come in very handy. So ushers will have those. You can just drop your offering in the basket. We'll also have to adapt how we do our internal controls at the end of Mass, because we're going to limit the number of ministers involved. Normally, it's 2 unrelated individuals that have to be in charge of the collection, and I believe it was the 2 readers who would handle that. But we're not going to have 2 readers, we're going to have 1 reader. And we're not going to have a sacristan in the back helping out, so we'll have to find another way to do that. But then, as I'll talk about a little bit later, we'll do the collection a little bit different for the parish hall. The offertory procession is suspended. The bread and wine, water will already be up there at the altar. I'll also have no servers up there, just for precaution's sake. Communicants' hands must be adequately elevated and flat. There'll be no chalice for the foreseeable future. Just can't envision when that will come back. Again, limited liturgical ministers. 1 reader, 1 cantor, and accompanist, and then an extraordinary minister for the hall. Okay. So they ask that we continue to live stream masses if possible, and we do intend to do that. Sanitize the pews and bathrooms after each service. And this was new today, an executive order in the state of Kansas, that the door hardware before the service begins and after, and before it ends, has to be disinfected or sanitized. So the hardware before the service begins and before it ends. We'll have to have a group of volunteers to do that. Our extraordinary ministers of Holy Communion, well, they've got to wear masks like everybody else, sanitize their hands before and after distribution, avoid touching communicants' hands, and if they're touched, well, then we have to sanitize. Adoration chapels are to remain closed. That's because of the close proximity of people who participate. in exposition. Ours will be unlocked like it has been, but we just won't have exposition until this clears up. Confessions may continue if best practices can be followed. Right, so currently I'm hearing confessions in the chapel. I set my chair up clear up by the tabernacle, facing the tabernacle. I put a kneeler at the entrance so people walk through the door, and then the kneeler is there, and they kneel down and go to confession. Ideally, we're supposed to wear masks. What I've noticed when people do that is I can't understand them, which maybe you'd like, but I'll leave that up to you. That's probably where we'll continue to hear confessions. Now, based off of those guidelines, we've developed a reopening proposal for you. I'd like to put forward and get your input. Okay, the first is that we're going to send out a survey electronically, and it's a representative survey. There's going to be people in the parish who don't have electronic means, but what we're looking for is just a broad sample so that we can base some decisions off of those. So it's going to ask the family name, how many members are in your household, which masses do you plan to go to, or can you go to, are you willing to go to? Are you willing to volunteer to help disinfect? Are you willing to help volunteer to usher? Those are the two that are going to be especially needed. Ushers will be seating people so we get them in the right place. That'll make more sense in just a little bit when you see the video. Okay, so we're going to base the number of masses off of the volunteer base that we have and the desire of those, willingness of those to be present for Mass. I don't anticipate at the beginning that we're going to have a full Mass schedule. Okay, on that survey, you're likely to find some things that look a little unusual to you. For example, there will probably be the 5:30 Mass and the 8 a.m. Mass on there, but we can plan to continue to stream the 10 o'clock Mass. And I'm thinking of keeping it at that time. I'm not sure, but keeping it at that time and just as a streaming Mass only so that we can sing and people can participate in that way from home. But also, if you're streaming and doing communion and singing, it's going to end up going too long, and it's going to be awfully hard to make a quick turnaround for 11 o'clock Mass, right? Even if we move it to the regular 9:30 time. So we'll see, but you may see some unusual times, like you might see 2 Saturday Masses, 3:30 and 5:30. And then you might see 8 o'clock on Sunday morning, and you might see 10 a.m. but streamed in the hall with communion offered. Okay, so when that survey comes out, complete it, and there'll be a place on there for you to mark, I'm not comfortable coming at this time. So we need that response too. The deadline to get that back to us is Friday, May 15th. Okay, so a week. The scheduled Masses will be based on the survey results. First public Masses will be offered the weekend of May 23rd and 24th. Technically, it's possible right now to offer public Masses, but none of us priests and employee are planning to do that just because of the logistical concerns. We want to get things situated to be able to do this as properly as we can, to do the best practices, integrate the best practices that we can. But also it just depends on the need and the volunteers out there. So we plan to have first public Masses on the weekend of May 23rd, 24th. And now for these videos, which will show you something of what I'm thinking. That is, I had initially thought of polling the parish in a very specific way so that we knew precisely who was going to be at which Mass on a weekend so that we can get the most people in there. But that just becomes a logistical nightmare because we're looking at maybe 80 people in the church. Okay, if you sit 2 here and 3 here, and if you get a family who comes in, well, they might throw out the measurements that you have. If there are 6 people right next to each other and you were counting out individual seats at 6 foot apart, well, that's going to be all thrown off. So it's just this huge puzzle. What I began to think would be a possibility, and a better possibility, is that we situate the Mass that's set up in the church, as you'll see in this video, and then allow for overflow into the parish hall where we'll stream the Masses, right? And you'll be able to receive communion there. And if we do that, we're going to be about at the capacity that we were for one Mass when church was fairly full. So I think it can work that way. So take a look and listen at these videos. To create the proper distancing, I have taped off every other pew and started the places where people can sit about 3 foot from the center of the aisle, just so that during communion there isn't extended contact within that 6 foot range. So you can see here how the first section here is X'd off. So that's my intent. So that provides that distance between the center of the aisle and where people will begin to sit. Here you see a section that's taped off. What I've done is allowed for 2 people, 2 spaces on the inside of the pew, and then an area that's taped off here or X'd out here to provide the proper distance between the people in this first section and those in this next section. This is taped off to allow for 3 people, or if there are a couple of small kids, it could be 4 or so. This will allow us to somehow seat those who are coming in. I thought of different ways of trying to structure this. A section for individuals, a section for families, but that just becomes logistically impossible. So what we can do here is, if there's a family of 5, for example, or 6, they can divide up mom in one section and dad in one section. Ordinarily, I would think that would be a possibility for a family to do. If there's just an individual, then we would seat them in this first section that's got enough space for 2, for couples. But if you have an individual, then we can set them there. If we do it this way, I believe we can fit about 80 people in here, properly distanced. The parish hall is such a handsome and useful building. It will be very useful and very helpful in these coming weeks. What it does is allows us not to have to coordinate precisely with every family so we know exactly who's going to be at church, but to open up the weekend masses to all those who would like to attend. And then when we've reached capacity in whatever phase we're at in the governor's plan, then we can send the overflow over here. We'll have ushers as we go out the church to direct people to the proper seats, filling up from the front to the back. We've arranged here for different scenarios. Over on the west side, we've arranged with 6 rows of 6 chairs. This would be for the larger families in our parish. Notice how it's close to the bathroom, so it's easy access if need be. Now, if by chance we don't have that many families with that many children, many members, then we can also use it for individuals, 1
at one end and one at the other. It's 6 foot apart there. Then we have this section, this column with 4 chairs for families roughly that size, and then over here 3 chairs next to each other, and then a couple of columns with 2 chairs. This can be for couples or for individuals. The ushers will guide you here, and then we've got another column of 3 and then another column of 2. Now, if by chance a family is not able to be accommodated by one of the arrangements, for example, let's say that there are 5 members, it's possible for them, one would think, to be able to split, mom going one place, dad the other with the kids. If that is not possible, we could push 3 chairs next to the 2 so that all could sit together. We'll have tape on the floor so that we don't have to lay these out again, but ordinarily we would ask that only the ushers would rearrange any of the chairs. We will need to know where people sit so that we can disinfect afterwards. Our plan is, if you are here participating, at the end of the service, before you leave, we'll just have you turn your chair that direction so we know which chair to disinfect. These chairs are flexible, but they will be a little bit more involved to disinfect than what a pew would be. For the collection, I believe we'll have 2 ushers, and with the distancing that we have here and no pews in between, it gives us a flexibility to have the ushers just carry a basket in front of all these rows of chairs. So the ushers will just walk past, you can drop your collection in, and they'll continue on around till they finish up. It'll be something similar for Holy Communion. You'll remain at your places in here, and the extraordinary minister, when he or she comes over, will just move down these rows. So you'll stand, extend your hand nice and flat so that they can set the host in your hand. So you won't have to worry about spacing for communion lines, but the extraordinary ministers will just work their way around. It'll take some coordination for exiting to try to keep the proper distance, but I think we can handle that. And here's a shot facing the south. You can see the arrangement here. You can see those nice big TVs we're blessed to have. I believe that we are able to increase the occupancy or the participation of parishioners by doing this by about 140, I think it was, that we figured or so. So it's a big increase. It should bring us to about our normal occupancy for each Mass. Normally we're somewhere around 220 to 250, somewhere in there.
Okay, I hope that made some sense to you. Now, there's a special opportunity that I think we should take advantage of. I think we can do this in a respectful way, and I think it will be beneficial for us. So for this Sunday, the 10th and the 17th, what we would like to do is open up the Cottonwood Street section in front of the school. Right? So the gates that are there will be opened after the stream Mass, so that those who have attended Mass, who participated in that stream Mass, you got to participate in it, and then get in their cars and drive down, and you'll see the route that we kind of have marked out nearby. You'll be able to see that. You'll drive down on 2nd, you'll turn south on Cottonwood, and then you'll proceed to the place where I will be at. You'll roll down your windows. You'll have been prepared as you've been proceeding up to that point. We'll have somebody out with a leaflet handing some prayers to you that you can prepare yourself or maybe your family for. There'll also be someone there with one of those pole collection baskets if you want to drop off your offertory. And when you get to me, you'll roll down your window. You'll stay inside unless your family is large enough that there aren't windows for all, then you can step out. But everybody else should stay inside. Roll down your window, keep your hands inside, and I will give you communion. There could be a minister helping me depending on the size of 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 the crowd. Okay, and then you'll proceed on your way. I think this is a very legitimate way to come together and receive our Lord. When I visited with some priests about this, one was concerned that you wouldn't participate in the streaming Mass and just come for communion. So you got to participate in the streaming Mass. No, just popping in for communion. And two, there was concern about being respectful of the host. So we want to make sure that we are respectful. This is all weather permitting, right? But you place the host in your hand, and everybody who receives the host will consume it before you pull away. I ran this by my grandmother, who I think the world of. She's very devoted, and she said, "Oh yeah, this is a good thing. You should do it." And she said, "What I'm finding is I see why people like Sunday morning so much. You can sleep in, take it easy. You don't have to get up and get dressed and get around." I said, "Grandma, you're developing a bad habit." She said, "I know." Well, this is a way that even if you're uncomfortable coming to Mass, you could receive Holy Communion. I think it could be a good thing. So on the 10th and the 17th, we'll provide this. And then we're going to gauge whether or not there's enough ongoing interest to continue to do that for people who are not comfortable yet coming back to Mass. All right. So again, leaflets, the collection, the Holy Communion, and again, its continuance will be determined through a survey. I also want to mention that the parish office will now reopen this coming Tuesday at noon. So Tuesday and Thursdays, it'll be open noon to 4. We are going to require masks, just like other places are, if there's extended contact. We don't anticipate that there'll be a whole lot of traffic. We'll just kind of adapt as we go forward. And speaking of that, there's going to be ongoing adaptation, right? So we're going to take a step and see how things work and adjust as needed. So be patient. I know you will with all of this. I'm just struck again and again how God is never outdone in generosity and how limited our vision is. Who could have imagined how useful those gates in front of the school would be? I just wanted that barricade out of the way and for our kids to have a convenient, safe drop off and pick up. But look at this. This is going to provide something so very good. And like Giving Tuesday, in which we bought those TVs for the hall. Well, now lots more people will be able to attend Mass. Okay, you can't outdo God with generosity. This sound system for the hall has arrived. Right, so we'll be working on that, and that should be up and going in time. Lastly, we'll have a web page. You see it here with all of this information and a lot more on it. Okay, don't hesitate to reach out with your questions, comments, and I look forward to seeing you soon.